Hello and welcome to The Road Already Traveled, a podcast where we feature lessons from successful entrepreneurs and the professionals that serve them as they share their inspiring stories and insights. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, I'm Rich Schutte, your host of The Road Already Traveled, where we share lessons from entrepreneurs, like-minded business owners, and the professionals that serve them, providing valuable insight to those listeners that are on the same journey. This episode is brought to you by Avalan, a wealth management firm dedicated to personalized financial, business, and investment planning for entrepreneurs as they make their way in our chaotic world. Are you ready to take control of your financial future? At Avalan, we believe wealth isn't just about numbers. It's about freedom, security, and living life on your terms. Wherever you are in your entrepreneurial journey, our team of experts is here to guide you every step of the way. No cookie-cutter solutions, just smart, personalized strategies designed for your goals. Using our unique Optimal Entrepreneur program, our relationships are built to last generations, helping clients achieve lifelong goals through a thoughtful, consultative approach. Visit avalanwealth.com today and start building the future you deserve. That's AVALAN wealth.com. Today I have Jeff Neumeister joining us from Kelly+Partners. Jeff has been a trusted tax professional for entrepreneurs for over 20 years, and I'm really excited to have him here. I'm going to read a quick bio, and I'll let Jeff get into some more of the good things that we ultimately want to share as we go through the questions. But I think it's important that you all know who he is. For me, I'm pretty excited to have Jeff join us here because I've met him through Entrepreneurs Organization, or EO, which has been something that's been life-changing for me in my journey with entrepreneurs, like-minded people such as Jeff, to be able to travel this journey with me. Jeff is well-educated and experienced forensic expert and a consultant in accounting, cryptocurrency, and financial advisory services. He is the managing partner at Kelly+Partners Advisory Services and a partner at Crypto Tax International. Small organizations, startups, holding entities, high net worth individuals, middle market companies, directly and through their retained counsel, have relied upon Jeff to identify problems, uncover frauds, plan successful exits, improve efficiencies, initiate and defend against litigation, and facilitate sustainable growth. Over his 23 years of professional experience, he's worked in firms ranging in size from large international entities to small regional practices. He has been a recurring speaker for conferences, webinars, private events. What a great bio. I think it's pretty cool that I get to have you here.
Thanks.
What's also cool about Jeff is not only does he serve entrepreneurs, he's one himself. As I mentioned, I had met him in EO, and meaning that, he's actually an owner of the business that serves us as entrepreneurs. I think that gives these types of professionals a genuine leg up in the way that they serve because they have a way of understanding how we think because they're essentially traveling the same road that we're traveling. So Jeff, thanks for joining us. Can't wait to dive in a little bit and hear a little bit more about your story.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, Rich.
I thought maybe it might be kind of cool to start off with some personal questions, just so we get to know you a little bit as the person behind the profession. And I always have a little bit of fun with this. What do most people not know about you? Quirks, strange habits, or any hobbies?
I'm kind of curious if I asked the same question to my kids, a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, what they'd answer. I'm sure it'd be humorous. But one thing that a lot of folks don't know about me, or some do, some that are closer to me, is that I used to be a very avid distance participant. So events like triathlons, marathons, obstacle course races, whatnot. A little less so in the last few recent years, largely due to the business and young children, but still something that I am passionate about. Really cool.
It's not something I knew about you either. That in and of itself is a little bit crazy, but again, maybe trying to get a little bit of personal insight about you. Why don't you, if you're comfortable, share maybe one of the craziest things that you've ever done?
Sure. Several years when I first kind of got into distance events, start off like a 5K and then 10K and just kind of ramp up from there. And actually, the way I got into it is my first semester at college in Arizona. I went away for school and I joined the boxing intramural team. And one of the things that the coach emphasizes is you might not be the fastest, you might not be the strongest, but if you can outlast your competition, you will always win, right? Period, the end. So he really pushed endurance. right? And resilience. And one of the avenues for that, of course, is just running. Right? So I started off running around the campus. This is at U of A many, many years ago. And I'd go on a jog, maybe half a mile, a few miles. And over time, over the course of like weeks and months, I got to a point where I'm running 12, 13 miles away from the campus and then back again. And so I kind of took that passion and I started doing formal events, formal marathons and other races. And over time, it became almost too easy in a way, right? I don't mean that in an egotistical manner, like, oh, a marathon, that's not a big deal, right? No, it is, right? Especially someone's first race. But I started looking for other challenges, way to up the ante. And so in 2017, right before I started my business, I did an event called Marathon de Salvos. It takes place in Morocco every year in the Sahara. And what it is essentially a 150-mile foot race through the desert, self-sustaining, right? So you carry all your own stuff for the whole 5 or so days that you're out in the desert. The only thing they provide is medical attention if needed, right?
Wow. And so the distance of that race was how long again?
About 150 miles.
150 miles. So
Yeah.
talk about something that really coincides with the entrepreneurial journey, right? It's so much of it is, as our audience understands, is truly just being able to outlast everybody else, perseverance, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah.
That's remarkable, buddy. It's cool to get to learn more about you than I thought I knew quite a bit, but little did I. Where are you from? What was it like growing up? What brought you to U of A?
I think I just wanted to get away from home. So I was raised in a military household. My dad was in the Air Force for 2.5, 3 decades or so. So the question of where I'm from, I'm always curious as to like what's meant by that. I was born in Oklahoma, lived there for a couple of years. I don't remember it. I don't consider myself an Oklahomian or whatever, right? Because we moved every few years. Right? So I'm really from all around the domestic continental U.S. Lived in maybe a dozen different states, give or take. But I settled here in the LA area almost 20 years ago. Yeah, so I consider this to be home now.
Right on. Well, so no boomer sooner for you, huh?
Right.
What was it like growing up in a situation like that? How did that kind of create the structure for who you are now?
Growing up in a military household, there's a couple things that are common themes that I'm sure some of my fellow Air Force brats could empathize with. One is, expectation. That was definitely ingrained in me, and that's a good thing, right? I rarely see enough as enough, right? Hence the 150-mile race in the desert. Right? The other common theme is having to move around all the time. Pick up and restarting over and over again, like with friends and whatnot. As a young child, it was the worst thing in the world, right? Oh, we're moving again this summer. Like, oh, I'm gonna miss my friends, like that whole thing. And I saw it as an awful thing, an awful experience up until adulthood. Then I started realizing, wow, it's really easy for me to just pick up and just go away to school, right? No big deal, no anxiety, easy to make friends, meet new people, learn the new places and stuff. And I quickly realized in probably my early 20s that very beneficial, right? Having that skill set just that ingrained in me of having to go through that over and over. So in hindsight, I saw it as a very, very worthwhile experience.
That's actually kind of epic, brother. It's touching, and it's also it's interesting how life gets shaped, right? And amongst so much chaos. Although I'd imagine that probably has also taught you well how to service a typically more chaotic crowd than most. Yes. Very
much. Yeah. Used to working with all range of personalities. Yeah.
So this will be the last personal question I ask you, and I think it kind of starts to lead into some of the business questions. But I'm going to ask you kind of 2-part question here. First, what did you want to be when you were growing up and in that chaotic environment? And then, were there any people that were inspirational or large influences on you as you were thinking about what it is you wanted to do, when you became an adult?
Sure. As a young child, what I wanted to be when I grew up was to be an archaeologist. Bear in mind, this is in the days of fifth grade, sixth grade, whatever, and seen Indiana Jones movies and stuff. And I thought that's what archaeology was. I thought that was very cool. Over time, I learned that's not really what it is. And then I kind of really wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do for several years, even in the early years of college, until kind of settling on business. And even then, I wasn't really sure what area of business. I was leaning a little bit more towards IT. So the first undergraduate program I completed was in business and information technology. So half of the is in a concentration I got to pick. And options I think were like management, marketing, economics, and accounting. I was very good at math, and I like math, so I chose accounting because I thought accounting was math. Quickly learned it's not. Right? Might use some math concepts, but it's not math at all. It's the language of business. And so I just sort of fell into accounting. And then when I went out for my first, W-2 job post degree, I applied for a number of different roles, some IT roles and some accounting roles. I got a job at a forensic accounting firm, not knowing what that was either, and quickly just fell in love with it, and it kind of stuck ever since.
That's actually pretty awesome, and that is a great lead in to getting into some of the professional questions. But just to wrap that up, other than Indiana Jones, were there other influences?
I think it's just the path that sort of organically unfolded as it happened. But I won't discount probably the influence, the heavy influence that both my mom and dad had on me along the way.
Awesome. I'm always prone to refer out to professionals serving our clients and which are entrepreneurs. I'm always prone to find others that are really not those W-2 employees, right? Those that have taken on their own path, taken on their own companies. Know what it's like to live off of a Schedule C, or K-1s or whatever it may be. And so, I felt really fortunate, over time to be able to refer, some people your way. And I feel even more fortunate when I get the feedback from those people in terms of how great that experience is. Sending over somebody who's a very prominent figure in a professional sports organization that's well known, and your ability just to immediately integrate with that type of a personality, as private as it may be in many cases, was really an impressive thing for me. So, as we get into the business side, so you'd mentioned, that you'd kind of found your way through the forensic accounting side, but how did you get started then when you actually, decided to do what you're doing within Kelly+Partners?
Yeah. So for several years, I worked in pretty much just forensic accounting roles at firms of various sizes. Did some director of accounting functions too. And after a number of years of working kind of an employee role and always feeling that ceiling, always feeling the constraints of wanting to do more, I'm like, no, we don't need to do that. Everyone else has already kind of left earlier in the day to go play golf. It became frustrating. I realized, I'm bringing in quite a bit of work and I want to do more without the shackles of being constrained. So I'll just do my own thing. And that evolved into at the time, as Neumeister and Associates in 2017. And what I did is I took my experience of expert witnessing in the courtroom, having to be an expert in a lot of things, accounting, finance, and tax. And one thing that the forensic perspective allows is always finding that thing that's missed by everyone else, right? The number of projects I've been brought into where the CEO didn't catch it, the CFO, the controller, the bookkeepers, the outside tax CPA, the external auditors, the outside general counsel, everyone missed something, that thing that's been missed by everyone else, right? So I used that unique lens to all the other services in the accounting function, right? In part because when someone hears the acronym CPA, they're like, let me ask you a tax question. And I find that taxes are instrumental and integrated in pretty much everything we do as entrepreneurs and business owners, right? But it's not the sole focus, and it shouldn't be the sole focus, right? There's a holistic perspective that should be considered. And I try to apply that forensic perspective from all my years in the courtroom and in the litigation and apply it to all these other areas of accounting.
I can't actually imagine a more valuable asset than somebody that has the ability in your role to find things that others have missed. Because, so much of the journey for any entrepreneur isn't even so much what they make. and apply them, in a way that makes them more successful in operating their businesses, as well as how much they get to keep for themselves and not share with, Uncle Sam and all of our friends in the various states. What a unique and amazing perspective to be able to come at this with. We kind of already talked a little bit about what led you to the career. So, but what I'd like to know more is, what was it like in the early days, right? When did you realize that serving entrepreneurs was something, that could make a significant impact? You just talked about how you can, but when did that light bulb go on?
I think that light bulb went on pretty quickly after I started my own shop, because now I wasn't just advising clients that were external towards me, it was also advising people that are on the same path as me. And so be able to have the similar experience through, rather than me just kind of talking in a vacuum of, advising them what I think they should do, but not experiencing it for myself.
Kind of like that by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs.
Right. Yeah.
It's really cool. So let's talk about professionally and the type of impact specifically that you have with your clients. What I'd really like for our listeners to hear about is what you do and some of the strategies you use to create a better life for these entrepreneurs that you serve. Perhaps you can share a couple of examples, try and frame them as stories if you can, because we all relate a little bit better to a story than we do just, cold hard facts coming at us. But in those stories, maybe you've got a couple of winning examples, as well as maybe one of those, which I certainly have more than one of, where you're thinking, God, I just wish that they listened to me moments. Like I said, I'm really hoping that this is an opportunity to kind of enlighten our listeners as to where somebody in your particular profession can really make a significant impact, or where you had an opportunity to make an impact where that advice wasn't taken, and perhaps, some of the ramifications of that happening. Yeah,
actually, I could probably share a couple of examples on either side. But first, I'll give you a good example where a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners kind of think in the context, I have a CPA, let me see if they could save me on tax, right? It's still important, right? But it's just part of the picture. So I have a real estate development client. They develop a lot of residential tracts, usually maybe like 80 to 150 home setups, communities. They engaged me originally to handle tax returns. Pretty straightforward, very vanilla, nothing super complex. But during a call one time, their controller was griping about their job costing and reports, and they weren't working the way they were hoping. It's difficult to pull them together outside the system. And I said I'd be happy to kind of take a look, because on the side, I didn't mention this before, but I've been also teaching as a professor at a local university for almost 10 years now. And I always found that's actually one of the best ways to understand something is actually, if you being able to teach others it, right? It forces you to look at things in a little bit of a different way. And so we started digging through their systems and looking at how they're coding things and what they were trying to get out of these reports for their lots and their projects, get them what they're looking for on a go-forward basis. And throughout that, we also identified a lot of other little things that would make them a little bit more efficient. So they kept us on board as kind of as a recurring oversight group, right, for all the things that they're doing on the books. Right? So we're not handling the day-to-day bookkeeping, but we're providing this higher level resource throughout. Now, probably one of the biggest wins that came out of that was realize that the way that their investments were structured with the outside investor is there's trigger points. And once the trigger point happens with paying back the original investment for a new project, all of a sudden their proportional share of allocable profits jumped up significantly, right? So they start off, I'll just make up numbers, instead of until they hit that trigger point, they get like 4% of profits. So they're inherently incentivized to obviously pay back those investments as quickly as possible. And it's by month, right? So if they hit that trigger on July 31st, then it's going to take effect in July. If they hit it August 1st, it takes effect August 1st, right? So sometimes making a payment a day earlier could be the difference of $100,000, couple $100,000 in profit. So they're highly incentivized to want to track that. So anyways, we kind of developed a system to help them identify those opportunities so that if they do have the cash flows available to hit the trigger early by a few days, it could be tremendously impactful to their profit margin, right? And they're internally grateful for that. For a loan with 50% interest rate, it more than pay for itself, right? And they quickly realize the value in leveraging just to help them with those cash flows that hit those triggers early. Right? On the other end of the spectrum, where we give advice and it just kind of falls on deaf ears. Everyone I'm sure still remembers the pandemic days and EIDLs and PPP loans. Right? We had a client that sourced a significant PPP loan in the millions of dollars. And we weren't part of that process at all, but I advised them because of all the exposure related to this, right? Eventually, the government made it very easy to get these loans, right, on the front end. But on the back end, there's always the likelihood that there's going to be a lot of scrutiny, very mindful of that likelihood of an audit, if you will, when they play catch up to scrutinize some of the loans that they are already given out. So this particular client, again, took out a significant PPP loan. I recommended that, okay, we need to make sure that every single dollar is accounted for, right? Created a template for them to record what it was for, what aspect of the business, how it's going to be expensed, for them to sign off, for their in-house bookkeeper to sign off, for their general counsel to sign off, right? So it shows a lot of diligence in trying to adhere to the requirements of the PPP when that scrutiny does happen. Even if they're in the wrong, just going through that good faith effort with the government, showing, look, we've tried to document everything. We tried to make sure we were justifying everything and everyone was on the same page. Fast forward, lo and behold, the government did follow up to scrutinize things and found that things were not documented at all, were not justified at all. They filed criminal proceedings against the owner. And then I was subpoenaed by the U.S. government and the prosecution to go to Salt Lake City to testify against my former client. And it didn't feel good, but then there's always that part of me that's like, I told you so, right? But that kind of stuff does happen. And I wish it didn't, right? Had they just heeded my advice, worst case, they would have probably had to pay back the loan in full and maybe some penalties interest. It wouldn't have been a criminal investigation, right? Because they would have been able to demonstrate the diligence and good faith in trying to do the right thing.
Any other stories that you can think of that you want to share, or do you want to kind of step into some more questions?
We can step into more questions. I have a lot of stories, especially on the fraud front, about how often it happens. Actually, I'll share a recent one now. There's and this is more of a takeaway here is just, trust but verify, right? Had two attorneys in a law firm, small practice, maybe half a dozen employees, 50-50. One of them was the finance partner, the one that was in charge of overseeing the books and records, of making sure that the accountant filed the tax return, all that kind of stuff. Over the course of several years, the partner that retained me, he and his wife, X number of years, the firm is making millions of dollars gross, but he's taking home 80 grand, 120 grand, right? Something he'd be making a lot more as a W-2 attorney than what he was making as a 50% owner. Start digging through the books and records and find all kinds of things that do not look like they're business related at all. His now former partner was paying for the nanny, was paying for several vehicles, was paying for vacations, was paying for ghostwriter, was paying for all kinds of things not related to the business at all. So we did an analysis to figure out what was the financial benefits our partner got for all those years versus his former partner. And surprise, surprise, the variance was more than $1 million. And really it comes down to and that stuff happens all the time. I'm never surprised when somebody tells me like that they're shocked that their best friend, their partner, their spouse, their cousin, whoever did something like that to them. As it just need to make sure that they're looking, right? Look at your financial statements, ask questions, look at the books at least once a year, right? Preferably monthly or quarterly, right? And make sure you document things and actually have a meaningful operating agreement. Some have essentially like a downloaded template that they found online and then they both signed. It doesn't help with, breaking up the firm at all. It doesn't provide enough granularity explaining like how each one is to be compensated and stuff, right? So there might be some financial savings on the front end. Don't have to pay attorney's fees as much.
No doubt. And actually, I'll add to that a little bit, right? It's like when you think about it, especially an entrepreneur, right? If the average divorce rate in this country is, roughly 50%, right? Give or take, which is unfortunate. But when you look at entrepreneurs, that rate of divorce skyrockets, right? And this is in our own personal lives and in marriages. And it's an unfortunate thing, but it's like, we ultimately become married to our business in so many ways that sometimes we neglect the personal side. And it's about keeping that balance and things that, people like yourself or me are, important in being able to do. But when it comes to the businesses, they separate far more often than the personal marriages do. And to your point, right, going into, an operation, trusting their best friend or the person that they're going to work with forever and that they're never going to screw them, are important for someone with a forensic background to come in and figure it out on the back end. So I think that was a great nugget that you highlighted in there, is just how important it is to have these agreements buttoned up, knowing that more times than not, they're not going to make it to the end. So thank you for that share. I think the stories are super impactful. Can you give me a reason, right, specifically why an entrepreneur must have a professional such as yourself sitting in their corner to help navigate through these things? We all as entrepreneurs, we know we need the CPA because our focus really is on the just get my taxes done and make me pay the least amount that I have to, right? But at the end of the day, as you mentioned earlier in this recording, that's not what it's about. Talk to me why, specifically as the person in your seat, why I need to work with someone like you.
The short version is you don't know what you don't know, right? And I think the first step for a lot of entrepreneurs, myself included, is just recognizing like there's a lot I don't know, right? And I'm okay with that. And because I recognize I don't know a lot of different things, to consult other professionals, right? Because there's a higher probability that they're going to be able to catch those things I'm not aware of, right? I have no desire to save time and money, or save money at least, to draft, say, my own contracts, right? I'm happy to pay an attorney, their insane rate, $1,000 an hour, to do that kind of work, right? Because they're going to know things I don't know, no matter how much Google researching I might do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We are so hyper-focused on our businesses and checking the boxes, right? CPA, check, right? Business contract, check. Health benefits, check. But we're really not thinking about what that means. So I think that's if there's any one thing that anyone takes from this along the way, I think it's just the value and the importance of understanding that, these professionals are not a dime a dozen. We all talk about, everybody in all of our industries that serve entrepreneurs talk about how, we're different and how we're there and how we're going to be planning. But so few of us actually at the end of the day actually execute on that. Right. And so knowing that, someone like yourself has that relationship with your clients where you're actually doing that planning, doing that work, and not just filing a return is nothing short of incredibly valuable to your clients and as well as to mine when, we work with them or send them to a professional such as yourself. Thank you for that candid answer. Talk a little bit, as you've worked with these high achieving type A personalities, of which some don't listen to you and find themselves in a world of hurt. What has been your biggest challenge in overcoming, that either personally or professionally, right, in managing those types of personalities?
A couple of the biggest challenges been, this came out of being bid a few times, right? But the presumption, I used to have the presumption that if someone is high net worth, well off, right, there should be no issue in ability to pay, right, their bills, right? And after finding that sometimes that's not always true, right? Their net worth could be tied up in so many other different areas that they don't have the cash to even pay like $2,000 bill. Sometimes the perception of the value provided by a CPA is sometimes seen as more of a commodity. And I think it's just something that's happened culturally and kind of across the globe when it comes to like bookkeeping and tax research services for sure. So I think navigating that and then also balancing the management of those types of personalities and relationships with the life at home, right? It's very easy for get calls and texts 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock on a weekday, right? Or any hours on a weekend. And for there to be kind of a blurring of lines of where running the business is versus where home life is. And it all becomes just kind of a commingled bag of stuff, and trying to make sure that balance that out appropriately for the sake of, my family and also what our clients are looking for.
And that's important for sure. Listen, your stories are awesome. I heard a lot of really cool things along the way. And nuggets that I think that you could probably point to as, things that you're proud of. But I didn't get an opportunity to really know or understand maybe about one of your proudest moments professionally, right? That moment where you look back on and you're sitting there thinking, God, that was a really big success. I'm really proud of that. That was something that really made me feel good about what I'm doing. Could you share a moment like that?
Sure. Yeah. Actually, it's probably the first really difficult deposition I had. So for those unfamiliar, and you're deposed as an expert witness, it's kind of like being under cross-examination for an extended period of time. They're not going to keep you on the stand for a long period of time because keep in mind it doesn't put the jury and or trier fact the judge to sleep. So you're really on and off within a half hour, a couple hours max, right? And that includes both direct and cross-examination. Keep in mind, cross is where they're coming at you, right? To try to find you slip up, show that you're not credible or something else. Deposition is just a perpetual cross-examination, right? You're under the examination by the opposing side for them to find as much as possible about you and prove you wrong, right? In the courtroom when the showtime happens. And deposition could be, again, it could be a couple hours, it could be a couple days plus. So the first really difficult deposition I had is maybe 5 or so years ago after I started my firm. It lasted almost a full day. It was absolutely brutal. It was just it was like an 8-hour mind game. I was done. I was mentally done. And I thought it went terrible because it was like, I felt like it was just me and him arguing the whole time. And you go to leave, shake hands with people. And it's kind of funny side note. After them essentially attacking you this whole time, it's funny how then like the switch flips and all of a sudden like, oh, thank you for coming in, speaking with us. Like everyone's cordial again, right? Even though they're just like at your throat for hours and hours, like it didn't even happen. But anyways, I thought it went horrible. Then I was saying bye to my side, my counsel. He said, wow, you did a fantastic job. I was, oh, okay. I didn't expect that at all. I thought it went terrible. So like he came at you the entire time. You held yourself extremely well. I'm thoroughly impressed. And it just, wow, okay. I didn't expect that, but that definitely was a very proud moment after the fact.
It's really cool, right? Because so many of us get into that situation where we have our own self-doubts and our own perception of how we're behaving in something, right? It's like, even as we'll go back and watch this, right, I'm probably going to, as I have with every one of these, like, oh, why did I do it that way? Or, we're always so hard on ourselves, but what a rewarding experience to actually have gotten that feedback. How'd that case end up? Did your testimony wind up making a difference?
It did. Yeah. They ended up settling before trial. So it helped. Yeah.
That's amazing. Do you have any mentors?
Not currently, but I have had mentors through the years. Some older colleagues that provide guidance and feedback and insights on projects over the years. Some of my professors. What's kind of interesting over the years, some of my former mentors, either business colleagues, referral sources, and even clients.
That's quite a pat on the back. Can you point to any piece of advice that you would consider to be like the best advice you've gotten along your journey and your path as an entrepreneur and as a professional that serves entrepreneurs?
Actually, it kind of goes back to what you pointed out in the story I mentioned about that deposition, which is to be okay with failure, right? To be okay that things didn't go as you hoped or planned. It's okay to slip up. It's okay to make mistakes, right? And I think as part of, for us entrepreneurs, we feel like, no, that's not okay. We're very critical of ourselves a lot of times. That's
great advice. Getting close to wrapping up here, but you talked earlier in our conversation about being a distance runner. So I'm sure when that was an active part of your life before kids, you had tons of daily rituals that allowed you to do that. But are there any today that you still maintain, right, as a professional or as a husband and father? What what type of rituals do you typically lean on to launch yourself into the day or wind yourself down at the end?
Yeah, I think daily rituals. Okay, sorry, my son just walked in.
You can agree with that.
I'll nowadays, usually a few times a week, I will consistently wake up. I get up pretty early, usually before my kids, like 4:35, and work out. And I find that helps put me in the right headspace. And it starts the day. I found that to be a really good go-to nowadays.
Awesome. And a way to contact you if this has been interesting to them. So website is www.kellypartners.com. And Kelly is Kelly. And there's no plus in the website?
Nope, just kellypartners.com. Yep.
And your email, if someone wanted to reach out to you, Jeff, do you want to go ahead and give that out?
Yeah, no worries. It's jeff.neumeister@kellypartners.com. The only tricky part in there is probably my last name. That's N as in Nancy, E-U-M as in Mary, E-I-S-T-E-R. Jeff.neumeister@kellypartners.com.
Awesome. And I really handed that back to you because I'm comfortable giving everyone your website, but your email is kind of a personal thing. So I wanted to make sure that I know you agreed to it at the beginning. But so the last question I have for you today, and if you want to reflect on it for a second, or, maybe you don't need to, but at the end of the day, right, when you're, selling your practice or retiring away from it or transitioning it to the next generation, whatever it may be, or for that matter, depending if you're looking at business life or life. So either on that side of it or you've just drawn your last breath, right? What is it that you want to be remembered for?
I think either way, whether looking at life or business life, it's nothing, something I want to be remembered for, but I'm hoping that the nuggets of guidance and best practices I've instilled in my staff and my children are things that they embrace, even subconsciously, and continue to practice those things. I've instilled those things in them, those good qualities in them, those good skill sets in them, and they continue to use them and pass them on to the next generation.
I actually love that. I'm gonna add to that question now because I like that answer so much. Who in your journey along the way has instilled those practices in you? Whether you're thinking about them as a person or not, but in the moment of you being who you are, is it a parent, spouse, business partner, client?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to the very beginning of who influenced me kind of growing up, but my parents, right, in different ways. My father, there's always more you could do. There's always something that's being missed. Right. In a client engagement, there's always something we're missing. There's always something more we could find, right, in an investigation. And then with my mom, who's a licensed therapist and been doing that for a long time, understanding that there's a people component to everything that we do, right? And so to not be so trapped in as an accountant and just the numbers and financial statements. It's an important part, but it's not the whole piece, right? There's the personalities and the hopes, desires, and wishes of people that need to be factored into it as well. Those off-balance sheet items. Yeah,
it is all about people, isn't it? And as entrepreneurs, so oftentimes we find ourselves in these islands seeking, those relationships and the people side of things, right? We get so caught up in our business. That's definitely great advice and a great way to want to be remembered, right, in terms of knowing that. All right, I think I'm ready to call this a wrap. Everybody, once again, we've been talking to Jeff Neumeister of Kelly Partners, where you can find him at www.kellypartners.com or at jeff.neumeister.com. I'm sorry, jeff.neumeister@kellypartners.com. And once again, on the spelling, it's Neumeister. So find him. He's been a valuable asset to me along the way, to some of my clients, and I think he can serve you well in addition to that. I've been really honored to be able to talk to you today, Jeff. I appreciate so much of your gracious share today. And so with that, like I said, we'll call this a wrap, and we'll look forward to seeing all of you next time on the road already traveled.
As always, thanks for joining us on the Road Already Traveled podcast. We're grateful you've joined our community and look forward to seeing you again for our next installment. So be sure to click subscribe so you won't miss a thing. This communication is for informational purposes only and does not purport to be a complete statement of all material facts related to any company, industry, or security mentioned. This material is limited to the dissemination of general information pertaining to its diversified services. The opinions expressed reflect our judgment now and are subject to change without notice and may or may not be updated. The information provided, while not guaranteed as to accuracy or completeness, has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable. Financial planning, advisory, and/or consulting services offered through Avalan LLC, a registered investment advisor. Prospects or clients who take advantage of any free consultations or services are under no obligation to hire Avalan LLC as their investment advisor. Listeners who are not market professionals or institutional clients of Avalan LLC should seek the advice of their financial advisor before making any investment decisions based on this communication. Additional information on any securities mentioned is available on request.